There's a moment from that CNN broadcast that people will analyze over and over again. It's when Hillary Clinton had just finished her familiar attack, calling Tulsi Russia's favorite politician, questioning her loyalty, suggesting she might still be compromised by foreign adversaries. The same tactic that had destroyed Tulsi's campaign in 2019, the same weapon that had worked flawlessly for decades. Anderson Cooper looked uncomfortable. C-SPAN cameras zoomed in on Tulsi's face, waiting for the defensive response, and Tulsi Gabbard smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a defensive smile, but the smile of a combat veteran who had faced real enemies in real combat situations. The smile of someone who knew exactly what was inside the briefcase sitting beside her chair. "Since you want to question my loyalty on national television, Secretary Clinton," Tulsi said, her voice steady as steel, "let's discuss your family's real secrets." Hillary Clinton didn't know that she had just attacked the only person in the world with both the authority and the evidence to destroy her completely. What happened over the next hour would end not just Hillary's career, but the entire Clinton political machine that had dominated Washington for 50 years. Every satisfying secret she had buried, every ally she had protected, every enemy she had silenced. All of it was about to be exposed on live television by the woman she had tried to destroy 6 years ago. This is that story. It was supposed to be a routine CNN special about America's leadership crisis. Anderson Cooper had assembled what the network called a distinguished panel to discuss the future of American foreign policy and intelligence priorities. Hillary Clinton was there as the elder stateswoman, the former Secretary of State who'd supposedly guide the discussion with her decades of experience. She'd done this dance 1,000 times before, appear on television, project wisdom and authority, subtly undermine her political enemies while positioning herself as the adult in the room. Tulsi Gabbard was invited as the current Director of National Intelligence, fresh off her controversial confirmation and already making waves with her intelligence community reforms. Most viewers expected a typical policy discussion, maybe some gentle disagreement about surveillance priorities or international threats. Nobody expected what actually happened. The setup was perfect from Hillary's perspective. She'd spent months watching Tulsi dismantle the intelligence community narratives that had protected Hillary's allies for years. The Russia collusion investigation, the suppressed Clinton Foundation probe, the buried email server evidence, Tulsi was systematically exposing everything Hillary had worked to keep hidden. Something had to be done. Hillary had used the same playbook against every threat to her power over the years. Bernie Sanders' Russian bots were promoting him, Jill Stein Russian asset. Anyone who challenged the establishment narrative, clearly compromised by foreign adversaries. The technique had worked perfectly in 2019 when she destroyed Tulsi's presidential campaign by suggesting she was Russia's favorite American politician. No evidence required, just the suggestion was enough to poison the well. The media ran with it, the Democratic establishment embraced it, and Tulsi's campaign never recovered. But 2025 was different. Tulsi wasn't a backbench congresswoman anymore. She was the Director of National Intelligence with access to every classified document, every intelligence assessment, every dirty secret the establishment had tried to bury. She controlled the very agencies that had been used to create and spread the lies about Russian collusion, and Hillary was about to make the fatal mistake of poking that bear. The first 30 minutes of the show went exactly as planned. Cooper asked standard questions about intelligence priorities, international threats, the role of the IC in a democratic society. Hillary spoke in her practiced political cadences about protecting our institutions and maintaining oversight. Tulsi responded with crisp professional assessments of current threat levels and intelligence capabilities. But you could feel the tension building. Every time Hillary mentioned accountability or transparency, Tulsi's jaw tightened slightly. When Hillary talked about ensuring our intelligence agencies serve the American people, Tulsi's eyes narrowed. The two women had history, and everyone watching could sense it. Then Hillary made her move. "Anderson," she said, turning toward the camera with that practiced political smile that had served her for decades. I think we need to have an honest conversation about some of the concerning appointments in this administration. Cooper raised an eyebrow. This wasn't in the planned discussion topics. I'm specifically concerned. Hillary continued, her voice taking on that sanctimonious tone she used when delivering political kill shots, about individuals who have been placed in sensitive positions despite having questionable loyalties. The studio fell silent. Even Cooper, who'd seen plenty of political attacks over the years, seemed surprised by the directness of what was clearly coming. Tulsi sat perfectly still, her military bearing evident as she watched Hillary with the kind of ice-cold calm that only comes from someone who'd faced real enemies in real combat situations. Those who'd served recognized that look immediately. It was the expression of a warrior who'd just been fatally underestimated by someone who had no idea what they'd unleashed. I mean, Hillary pressed on, apparently mistaking Tulsi's silence for weakness. How can we trust our most sensitive intelligence to someone who has repeatedly demonstrated sympathy for authoritarian regimes? Someone who has been, quite frankly, Russia's favorite American politician for years. There it was. The same attack that had worked in 2019, the same baseless smear that had derailed Tulsi's presidential campaign. Hillary was going back to the well that had never failed her before. Secretary Clinton, Cooper interjected, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. Those are some very serious allegations. They're not allegations, Anderson. Hillary cut him off, her voice rising with the confidence of someone who'd destroyed political careers with exactly this tactic. They're facts. We've seen the pattern, the sympathetic statements about Assad, the defense of Putin, the attacks on our intelligence agencies. How do we know Director Gabbard isn't still compromised by foreign adversaries? The accusation hung in the air like a death sentence. On live television, the former Secretary of State had just suggested that the current Director of National Intelligence was a foreign agent. What happened next will be studied in political science classes for generations. Tulsi remained motionless for exactly 3 seconds, not moving, not blinking, just staring at Hillary with that warrior's calm. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady as steel, but everyone in the studio could hear the controlled fury beneath the surface. Secretary Clinton, she said, her words precise and measured, since you want to question my loyalty to America on national television. She paused, reaching into her briefcase with deliberate precision. Let's discuss your family's real secrets. The effect was immediate and devastating. Hillary's practiced political smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, but it was long enough for millions of viewers to see that this wasn't going according to her script. Tulsi withdrew a thick folder marked with official DNI classification stamps. The camera zoomed in on the cover, Clinton Family, Foreign Financial Intelligence, Classified. As Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi continued, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I have access to financial intelligence gathered by Treasury Department investigators in coordination with international law enforcement agencies. What we've discovered about the Clinton family's financial relationships with foreign adversaries is illuminating. Cooper was frantically looking at his producers, clearly realizing that his show was about to become the site of the biggest intelligence disclosure in television history. Hillary's face had gone completely white. She'd spent decades protecting the secrets that had made her family rich and powerful, and now she was sitting across from someone who had access to everything. This is highly inappropriate. Hillary stammered, her usual commanding presence completely shattered. You can't just declassify sensitive information on television. Tulsi's smile was deadly calm. Actually, Secretary Clinton, as DNI, I can declassify anything I determine to be in the national interest. And exposing foreign intelligence assets operating in American politics, that's definitely in the national interest. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Hillary Clinton, the woman who'd controlled Washington for 4 decades, was suddenly the one on the defensive. And Tulsi Gabbard, with the full authority of the intelligence community behind her, was just getting started. Now, Tulsi said, opening the classified folder with surgical precision, let's talk about your family's real relationship with foreign adversaries. But what Hillary didn't know was that Tulsi had spent 6 months preparing for this exact moment. 6 months reviewing classified files, coordinating with Treasury investigators, and building an ironclad case. The woman who'd tried to destroy her in 2019 was about to learn what happens when you attack someone who fights back with facts instead of lies. Secretary Clinton, Tulsi began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who commanded the entire U.S. intelligence community. Let me start with a simple question that I think the American people deserve an answer to. How did your family accumulate over $200 million in wealth on government salaries? The question hit like a precision strike. Hillary shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly unprepared for this line of attack. As Director of National Intelligence, I have access to Treasury Department financial intelligence and FBI investigative files that tell a very different story about how the Clinton family built their fortune. Tulsi continued, removing the first document from her classified folder. This is a comprehensive analysis of international wire transfers involving Clinton family business entities over the past 25 years, prepared by Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network in coordination with international law enforcement agencies. She held up the document so the cameras could see the official Treasury Department seals and classification markings. Between 2009 and 2013, while you served as Secretary of State, the Clinton family received $127 million in payments from foreign governments and entities routed through 19 hidden bank accounts, recently discovered by the FBI's Los Angeles field office. The number hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. $27 million from foreign governments while serving as America's top diplomat. Cooper found his voice. Director Gabbard, that's an extraordinary accusation. Can you provide specifics? Absolutely, Tulsi replied, producing another document. Saudi Arabia transferred $25 million to various Clinton entities in March 2010, exactly 48 hours before you approved the largest arms deal in State Department history, $115 billion in weapons sales to the Saudi regime. She continued, reading from the official financial intelligence assessment. Qatar wired $12 million to Clinton Foundation accounts in August 2011, immediately before your State Department approved their LNG export applications that had been stalled for months. Ukrainian oligarchs connected to Burisma transferred $13 million through Swiss banks in 2012, just before your State Department changed its position on Ukrainian energy policy. Each revelation was more damaging than the last. The pattern was undeniable. Foreign money flowing to the Clinton family immediately before favorable State Department decisions. Hillary tried to interrupt. These are legitimate business investments and charitable donations. The timing tells a different story, Secretary Clinton. Tulsi cut her off with military precision. This isn't coincidence. This is a price list. She produced another document, this one bearing NSA classification markings. Our Signals Intelligence Division intercepted communications between Clinton Foundation officials and foreign representatives that show explicit coordination. This is a recorded call between your foundation's deputy director and Qatari government representatives from August 2011, intercepted by NSA counterintelligence operations. Tulsi activated audio equipment that had been set up at her position. The studio fell dead silent as she prepared to play actual surveillance audio. The recording quality is crystal clear, obviously from professional NSA equipment, she announced as she pressed play. A male American voice filled the studio. The minister confirms the $12 million transfer will be processed through the usual channels. A Middle Eastern accented voice responded, "Excellent." And Secretary Clinton's decision on the LNG permits, American voice, will be announced next week exactly as discussed. The Secretary appreciates Qatar's continued support for the Foundation's important work. Qatari voice, the Emir is pleased. This partnership has been very productive. The recording was absolutely devastating. Clinton Foundation officials coordinating with foreign governments linking donations to specific policy decisions. Hillary was hyperventilating, now her face completely drained of color. That's illegal surveillance. You can't use NSA recordings of American citizens. Actually, Tulsi replied with deadly calm. When American citizens are coordinating with foreign governments about policy decisions in exchange for money, that's exactly what NSA surveillance is designed to detect. It's called counterintelligence. She leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on the edge of someone who'd seen real corruption up close. Secretary Clinton. While you were getting rich from Qatari money, American energy workers lost thousands of jobs to the foreign competition you personally approved. While you were taking Saudi payments, our soldiers were fighting wars funded by the same regime that was paying your family. But Tulsi had saved the most damning evidence for last. The most concerning aspect of this financial intelligence, she continued, is what it reveals about your decision-making process as Secretary of State. You weren't serving American interests, you were serving paying customers. She produced a thick file marked with CIA classification stamps. This is a comprehensive assessment from our counterintelligence division showing how your pay-to-play system worked. Foreign governments didn't just buy Access Secretary Clinton, they bought policy, they bought American foreign policy decisions, they bought the State Department. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Financial records communications, intercepts, timing analysis, all pointing to the same conclusion: Hillary Clinton had been selling American foreign policy to the highest bidder. Hillary sat in stunned silence, her usual quick responses completely failing her. The confident political veteran who'd walked into the studio an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone who looked like they'd just been caught in the biggest scandal in American political history. While you were calling me a Russian asset in 2019, Tulsi said, her voice rising with moral authority, you were actually running a global money laundering operation through your family foundation. The projection is almost poetic. Cooper tried to regain control of his show. Secretary Clinton, how do you respond to these allegations? Hillary's voice was barely a whisper. These are taken out of context. The foundation did important work around the world. Important work? Tulsi's voice cut through like a blade. Secretary Clinton, you turned the State Department into a subsidiary of the Clinton Foundation. You sold American foreign policy like it was real estate. She reached for another folder, this one marked with different classification stamps. But the foreign money laundering was just the beginning. When you see what our cybersecurity division found on your private email server, Tulsi's eyes locked onto Hillary's with the intensity of a prosecutor about to present murder weapon evidence. The next folder contains evidence that will shock every American watching this. Hillary Clinton's private email server wasn't just a convenience. It was a national security catastrophe that compromised American intelligence for years. And now, as Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard had access to the NSA intercepts and counterintelligence files that revealed the true scope of the damage. Secretary Clinton. Tulsi began opening her second classified folder. The FBI's investigation into your email server was deliberately sabotaged by your allies in the Obama administration. James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok. They all conspired to bury the evidence of what actually happened to America's most classified secrets. She held up a document bearing NSA classification markings. But as DNI, I have access to signals intelligence and counterintelligence files that show exactly what our enemies obtained from your unsecured server. The implications sent a chill through the studio. Those 31,000 emails you claimed were deleted. The NSA recovered them all, every single one, and what we found will horrify every American who still believes in national security. Hillary tried to object. The FBI investigated thoroughly and found no evidence of. The FBI investigation was a sham. Tulsi interrupted, her voice carrying the authority of someone who now controlled that same FBI. Here's what they didn't want you to know. She began reading from an official NSA assessment. Foreign intelligence services accessed your server 847 times between 2009 and 2013. Chinese military hackers maintained continuous access for 3 years. Russian SVR downloaded the entire server contents twice. Iranian intelligence services obtained classified information about our operations in the Middle East. The numbers were staggering. America's enemies had been reading the Secretary of State's emails in real time. Your server had the cybersecurity of a Starbucks Wi-Fi network, Tulsi continued, and our enemies treated it like an all-you-can-eat buffet of American intelligence. She produced another document, this one with CIA classification stamps. Here's what they downloaded Secretary Clinton. Here's what your convenience cost America. Chinese intelligence obtained Pacific Fleet submarine deployment schedules, allowing them to track our nuclear deterrent capabilities. Russian SVR accessed NATO defense plans, compromising alliance security for years. Iranian intelligence received details about Israeli operations, leading to the compromise of assets and sources. But the most devastating revelation was still to come. This folder contains NSA intercepts of foreign intelligence communications about your server. Tulsi announced, preparing to play audio that would shock the nation. This is a conversation between Chinese military intelligence officers from February 2012, intercepted by NSA Pacific operations. The audio quality was professional grade, clearly from advanced surveillance equipment. Chinese voices filled the studio with English translation subtitles appearing on screen. Chinese voice translated, "Phoenix Asset Server access confirmed. Intelligence extraction proceeding as scheduled." Second Chinese voice, "Pacific Fleet nuclear submarine positions obtained. First voice, complete deployment schedules for next 6 months acquired. Beijing will be pleased." Second voice, "The American secretary makes our job very easy." The recording was chilling. Chinese intelligence discussing Hillary's server like it was their own intelligence database. But Tulsi wasn't finished. Your server also contained communications between you and President Obama's Secretary Clinton. Classified discussions about drone operations, special forces deployments, CIA activities, all accessible to foreign intelligence services. She displayed what appeared to be email headers on the studio screens. These are Obama-Clinton emails discussing Operation Neptune Spear, the bin Laden raid, found on your unprotected server and accessed by foreign intelligence. The national security implications were staggering. But the human cost is what makes this truly unforgivable. Tulsi said, her voice taking on the weight of someone who'd lost friends to enemy action. Photos appeared on the studio screens, young faces in military uniforms. Chief Petty Officer Michael Rodriguez, 28 years old, father of 2. Petty Officer First Class David Chen, 24, engaged to be married. Petty Officer Second Class James Mitchell, 23, fresh out of SEAL training. These 3 Navy SEALs died in Operation Pacific Storm in February 2015. The mission was compromised because Chinese intelligence knew exactly where to find them thanks to intelligence stolen from your server. The personal cost made the security breach unbearably tragic. Real families destroyed because Hillary Clinton wanted to check emails on her BlackBerry. Their families are watching this right now, Secretary Clinton. What do you say to the parents of Michael Rodriguez? What do you tell the fiancé of David Chen? How do you explain to them that their loved ones died for your convenience? Hillary was visibly shaking, now tears streaming down her face. The composed political veteran was completely shattered. I never meant for anyone to get hurt," she whispered. "Intentions don't resurrect the dead," Tulsi replied coldly. "And the damage didn't stop with those 3 heroes." She produced another file. "Our counterintelligence assessment shows that allies stopped sharing critical intelligence with the United States because they knew you were compromised. British MI6, Israeli Mossad, Australian ACIS, they all reduced intelligence cooperation because they couldn't trust American security. You didn't just compromise American Secret Secretary Clinton. You damaged relationships that took decades to build and cost American lives to maintain." The scope of the betrayal was becoming clear. This wasn't just carelessness. It was a systematic compromise of American national security. "But now I understand why you fought so hard to destroy me in 2019. Tulsi said, her voice rising with recognition. "Because you knew that someday someone like me might have access to the classified files that prove what you really did." She reached for her 3rd folder, this one bearing different classification markings. "You knew that the truth about your mental health, your real condition during 2016, your actual relationship with Russia, all of it would eventually come to light. Her eyes locked onto Hillary's with the intensity of someone about to deliver the final blow. The next folder contains intelligence that will explain everything Americans need to know about how the Russia hoax was really created. The intelligence that Tulsi Gabbard had declassified in July 2025 was the smoking gun that explained everything: how the Russia collusion narrative was created, why Hillary Clinton was so paranoid about Russian interference, and why she had systematically targeted anyone who threatened her power as Russian assets. Secretary Clinton. Tulsi began opening her third folder with the methodical precision of someone who'd conducted countless intelligence briefings. On July 23, 2025, I declassified intelligence showing that Russia had extensive compromising information about you during the 2016 campaign. Information about your mental health, your daily medication regimen, your real physical and psychological condition. She held up a document marked with the highest classification levels. This is a comprehensive assessment from the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence declassified under my authority, showing what Putin's intelligence services knew about you that the American people didn't. The implications were staggering. If Russia had compromising information about Hillary Clinton, it would explain her paranoid behavior about Russian interference and her tendency to project those fears onto her political enemies. Here's what Russian intelligence knew about your real condition during the 2016 campaign, Tulsi announced, reading from the official assessment. Quote, Clinton was suffering from intensified psycho-emotional problems, including uncontrolled fits of anger aggression and periods of confusion, end quote. Quote, Clinton was placed on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers and mood stabilizers to manage psychological instability, end quote. Quote, despite medication, Clinton exhibited frequent episodes of rage and disorientation during campaign events, end quote. Each revelation painted a picture of a candidate who was far from the composed leader she presented to the public. The Russian intelligence assessment also detailed your physical health problems. Tulsi continued, type 2 diabetes, ischemic heart disease, deep vein thrombosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. You were, according to Russian intelligence, a severely compromised candidate both physically and mentally. Hillary sat in stunned silence, her worst fears being revealed on live television. But here's the most important part. Tulsi said, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining a complex intelligence operation. Putin made a strategic decision to hold back all this compromising material during the 2016 election. He planned to release it after you became president to maximize blackmail potential. The strategy was diabolical in its simplicity. Instead of using the information to prevent Hillary's election, Putin would use it to control her presidency. So you were terrified, Secretary Clinton. You knew Russia had devastating information about you, and you knew they could destroy your presidency at any moment. That's when you decided to get ahead of the story. Tulsi produced what appeared to be communication intercepts. These are recordings of strategy sessions between your campaign and allied intelligence officials discussing how to manage the Russia threat. She activated her audio equipment once again. The voice that filled the studio was unmistakably Hillary Clinton's. We need to get ahead of the Russia story. If they start investigating Russian connections, they might find our vulnerabilities. We need to make Trump the Russia story, not us. A staff voice responded, the Steele dossier is making good progress. Should we increase funding? Hillary's voice, double it, triple it, whatever it takes. We accuse Trump of everything we're actually guilty of. Classic projection. Make Russia Trump the only story anyone talks about. The recording was devastating evidence of a deliberate disinformation campaign. You created the Russia collusion hoax, Secretary Clinton, because you were terrified of what Russia actually had on you, Tulsi explained. And when that strategy worked so well, you decided to use it against every political threat you faced. She displayed a timeline on the studio screens. The pattern is consistent and unmistakable. 2016 Bernie Sanders gains momentum, Russian bots are promoting him. 2016 Jill Stein threatens to take Democratic votes, she's a Russian asset. 2019 Tulsi Gabbard endorses Bernie over you, she's Russia's favorite politician. Anyone who challenged your power, anyone who threatened your control, anyone who dared to oppose the Clinton machine, they all became Russian assets. The systematic nature of the smear campaign was now clear. But the 2019 attack on me was personal, wasn't it, Secretary Clinton? Tulsi said, her voice carrying years of suppressed anger. It wasn't just about stopping my presidential campaign, it was about revenge. She produced another audio recording. This is you on a conference call with your staff, October 2019, planning my destruction. Hillary's voice filled the studio again. Tulsi Gabbard is dangerous. She has military credibility. I can't attack directly. She's a veteran. She's served in combat. The usual attacks won't work. Staff voice. How do we handle her, Hillary? Same way we've handled everyone else. Russian asset. Get the media to run with it. Make it about her loyalty, not her policies. Staff. But she's a decorated veteran who's served in Iraq. Hillary. I don't care if she's Audie Murphy reincarnated. She endorsed Bernie over me in 2016. She's a threat to everything we've built, so she's a Russian asset. The recording revealed the cold calculation behind the attack that had nearly destroyed Tulsi's political career. You destroyed my reputation, Secretary Clinton. You cost me millions in legal fees. You tried to end my political career because I had the audacity to endorse Bernie Sanders instead of bowing down to your coronation. Tulsi's voice was rising with years of suppressed fury. You weaponized the intelligence community, the media, and the Democratic Party to destroy anyone who threatened your power. You turned Russian asset into a political weapon to be used against American veterans, American politicians, American citizens who dared to oppose you. The scope of the manipulation was breathtaking. Media coordination, intelligence agency sources, Democratic Party talking points, an entire machine dedicated to destroying political threats through manufactured accusations of foreign loyalty. Hillary tried weakly to respond. These recordings could be fabricated, deep-faked. The NSA doesn't fabricate intercepts, Secretary Clinton, Tulsi replied coldly. These are authenticated signals, intelligence products with full chain of custody documentation. She reached for her fourth folder, this one bearing current 2025 classification stamps. But there's one more thing the American people need to know about you, Secretary Clinton. Something that's happening right now as we speak. Her eyes locked onto Hillary's with the intensity of someone about to deliver a kill shot. Let's talk about why you're really here tonight. Let's talk about the congressional subpoena you're desperately trying to avoid. The folder Tulsi opened next contains some of the most sensitive intelligence the American people had never been allowed to see, evidence connecting the Clinton family to Jeffrey Epstein's network, and the systematic cover-up that had protected elite predators for decades. Secretary Clinton, Tulsi began, her voice taking on the gravity of someone about to expose crimes against the most vulnerable. As we speak right now, you are under congressional subpoena for the Epstein files. Your deposition is scheduled for October 9th, just 3 weeks away. Let's discuss what you'll be asked about under oath. Hillary's face went ashen. This was the crisis she'd been desperately trying to avoid. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer has evidence that this case isn't about your husband's flight, Secretary Clinton. This is about what you knew when you knew it and how the Clinton Foundation was used to facilitate and cover up operations. Tulsi displayed official House oversight documents on the studio screens. These are financial records showing Epstein-connected entities donated $3.7 million to the Clinton Foundation between 2010 and 2013, disguised as education initiatives and laundered through Virgin Islands shell companies. The money trail was clear and damning. But the timing of these donations tells the real story. Tulsi continued. Every major Epstein payment to your foundation came within 48 hours of favorable State Department decisions affecting his business interests or associates. She began reading from Treasury Department financial intelligence. March 2011, Epstein associate transfers $400,000 to Clinton Foundation. March 2011. State Department approves visa applications for 3 individuals flagged by law enforcement. August 2012. Zorro Trust, an Epstein entity, donates $800,000 to Clinton Global Initiative. August 2012, your State Department intervenes to reduce charges against Epstein associate in international trafficking case. January 2013, Southern Trust, another Epstein shell company, transfers $1.2 million to Clinton Foundation. January 2013, State Department blocks extradition request for Epstein business partner wanted by European authorities. Each correlation was more damning than the last. Your calendar from the State Department shows something even more troubling. Tulsi announced displaying official scheduling documents, 17 meetings marked Private JE during your tenure as Secretary of State. The initials JE could only refer to one person. These weren't diplomatic meetings, Secretary Clinton. Your own scheduling staff noted they were personal and off the record. What was the Secretary of State discussing privately with a known trafficker? But the evidence got worse. House Oversight has obtained victim testimony that directly implicates you. Tulsi said, her voice heavy with the weight of protecting the innocent. Jane Doe number 47 testified under oath that she was told, and I quote, "You're going to meet some very important people tonight. The woman you'll meet used to be First Lady. She's very powerful. Be nice to her." This meeting took place at your Chappaqua residence in August 2010, according to the testimony. The witness was 16 years old. The revelation hit the studio like a physical blow. Hillary was visibly trembling now, her composed facade completely shattered. I would never harm children," she whispered. "The evidence suggests otherwise," Tulsi replied coldly. "House Oversight has communications between your staff and Epstein's team about reputation management and media strategy when victims started coming forward." She displayed what appeared to be official emails on the screens. This is from your Chief of Staff to Epstein Associates dated July 2016. Quote, "The Secretary is concerned about recent media attention regarding JE. We need coordinated response to protect all parties involved. Recommend immediate financial support for affected individuals willing to sign comprehensive NDAs." End quote. The systematic cover-up was evident in black and white. You weren't just aware of Epstein's activities, Secretary Clinton. Your staff was actively coordinating damage control and victim silencing operations. Tulsi produced FBI documents. The Bureau has reopened the case with new evidence, including financial records showing payments from Clinton Foundation accounts to victims and their families, payments contingent on their silence. Every payment was accompanied by legal documents requiring the victims to never speak about what they experienced. You turned child trafficking victims into paid conspirators in their own silence. The moral depravity was staggering. But the most damning evidence comes from the international investigation, Tulsi continued. Our allies have been conducting their own inquiries into trafficking networks, and the evidence they've shared with us paints a picture of systematic exploitation protected by political power. She displayed Interpol documents on the screens. British authorities have identified at least 12 victims who were transported internationally for events attended by American political figures. French intelligence has documented private flights carrying minors to locations where Clinton Foundation events were being held. This wasn't just about Jeffrey Epstein, Secretary Clinton. This was about an entire network of powerful individuals who used their positions to exploit the most vulnerable people in society. Hillary was sobbing now, her entire body shaking as decades of carefully constructed public image crumbled in real time. Every charity event, every foundation gala, every good work, it was all a front, wasn't it? Tulsi pressed. A way to access victims, facilitate operations, and maintain the silence necessary to protect the network. Anderson Cooper tried to intervene. Director Gabbard, these are extremely serious allegations. They're not allegations, Tulsi cut him off. They're documented facts supported by victim testimony, financial records, communications intercepts, and international law enforcement intelligence. She leaned forward, her voice taking on the intensity of someone who'd sworn an oath to protect the innocent. Secretary Clinton, you came here tonight thinking you could destroy me the way you've destroyed so many others. You thought your usual tactics would work. Call me a Russian asset question my loyalty suggests I'm compromised. But you made one fatal mistake. You attacked someone who now has access to the truth, all of it. Hillary could only sob in response, her political career and personal legacy collapsing in real time on live television. The American people deserve better than your lies, Tulsi continued. Our soldiers deserve better than your betrayals. Our children deserve better than your protection of predators. Our democracy deserves better than your corruption. The destruction of Hillary Clinton was complete, but Tulsi Gabbard wasn't finished. As the former Secretary of State sat sobbing in her chair, the Director of National Intelligence prepared to deliver the final judgment that would end not just Hillary's career, but the entire Clinton political machine. Secretary Clinton, Tulsi said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who just systematically dismantled one of the most powerful political figures in American history, 50 years. For 50 years, you've terrorized American politics with investigations, accusations, and character assassinations. You've weaponized congressional oversight against your political enemies while protecting the real enemies of America. Hillary's sobbing intensified, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered on live television. You sold American foreign policy to the highest bidder through your foundation. You compromised national security with your private email server, leading to the deaths of American soldiers. You created the Russia collusion hoax to cover your own vulnerabilities and used it to destroy anyone who threatened your power. And you facilitated the exploitation of children while running cover for elite predators. Each accusation was a hammer blow supported by the classified evidence Tulsi had systematically presented over the past hour. But most personally for me, Tulsi continued, her voice rising with years of suppressed anger. You tried to destroy my life and career in 2019 because I had the audacity to endorse Bernie Sanders instead of bowing to your coronation. You called me a Russian asset without a shred of evidence, destroyed my presidential campaign, and cost me millions in legal fees. The personal vendetta that had motivated Hillary's attack was now fully exposed. You thought you could do it again tonight. Walk into the studio, deploy the same smears, destroy another threat to your power, but you made one fatal error in judgment. Tulsi stood up, her military bearing evident as she towered over the broken political figure across from her. You attacked a combat veteran who now controls the intelligence agencies you used to weaponize against your enemies. You attacked someone who has access to every classified document, every financial record, every dirty secret you've spent decades trying to hide. The irony was perfect. Hillary had destroyed herself by attacking the one person with both the authority and the evidence to expose everything. So let me be clear about what happens next. Tulsi announced, her voice carrying the weight of ultimate authority. Based on the evidence presented here tonight, Congress will be opening comprehensive investigations into all Clinton family activities spanning the past 25 years. The House Oversight Committee will expand its current inquiries to include foundation finances, State Department corruption, and the systematic cover-up of trafficking operations. The Department of Justice Strike Force that has been reviewing my declassified materials will now have access to victim testimony, financial records, and communications evidence that proves criminal violations of federal law. Treasury Department investigators will be conducting comprehensive audits of all Clinton Foundation finances, including the 19 hidden bank accounts discovered by the FBI, to determine violations of tax law, money laundering statutes, and Foreign Agent Registration Act requirements. Our international law enforcement partners will be expanding their investigations into trafficking networks with full cooperation from American intelligence agencies that now have new leadership committed to truth rather than political protection. Each announcement was another nail in the coffin of Clinton political power. But this isn't about putting anyone in handcuffs tonight. Tulsi clarified, her voice taking on a tone of measured justice. This is about the American people finally seeing the truth they've been denied for decades. She looked directly into the camera, addressing the millions of Americans watching this unprecedented political destruction. Justice is a process, not a moment. Real accountability takes time, requires evidence, and demands that we follow the law even when dealing with those who spent their careers breaking it. But what happened here tonight proves something fundamental about America. No one is above investigation. No one is too powerful for the truth. And when authentic leaders with real authority stand up to corruption, transparency wins. Hillary Clinton, the woman who had terrorized American politics for half a century, could only sit and weep as her entire world collapsed around her. Secretary Clinton. Tulsi said, her voice now carrying a note of finality. Your reign of terror is over. Your days of destroying political enemies with lies and smears are finished. Your ability to weaponize government agencies against American citizens has ended. The investigations will continue, the truth will come out, and justice, real justice, will take its course. Anderson Cooper, who had watched this unprecedented destruction unfold, tried to regain control of his show. We're going to take a commercial break. No, Tulsi interrupted, her voice cutting through with absolute authority. The American people have waited decades for this moment. They've waited decades to see real accountability. They deserve to see this through to the end. She turned back to Hillary, who was still sobbing uncontrollably. You came here tonight thinking you could destroy me the way you destroyed so many others. Instead, you've destroyed yourself. You've shown America exactly who you really are. Not the public servant you pretended to be, but the corrupt, power-hungry politician who put personal gain above national security, family profit above American lives, and political survival above the protection of innocent children. The final judgment had been delivered. Hillary Clinton's political career, her legacy, her family's empire, all of it lay in ruins on live television. This is what happens when authentic Americans stand up to the establishment, Tulsi concluded. This is what happens when military honor confronts political corruption. This is what happens when someone who actually kept their oath to defend America faces someone who spent their career betraying it. The most devastating political destruction in American history was complete. The immediate explosion across social media was unlike anything in political history. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, #Clinton, Truth, Tulsi's Truth, and Clinton Exposed were trending worldwide, with clips of Hillary's breakdown being shared millions of times across every platform. The footage was devastating and impossible to ignore. Hillary's complete psychological collapse as evidence mounted. The audio recordings of her coordinating with foreign governments, the financial records showing systematic corruption, the victim testimony about trafficking networks, and most powerfully, Tulsi's moral authority as a combat veteran delivering justice for decades of betrayal. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube struggled to handle the unprecedented traffic as Americans shared their shock, outrage, and satisfaction at finally seeing real accountability. The establishment media, which had protected Hillary for decades, was forced to cover the story as clips went viral faster than they could be suppressed. International media picked up the story within hours. American democracy redeems itself through military honor was the headline in London's Financial Times. Combat veteran delivers justice Washington couldn't, led Germany's Der Spiegel. The day the Clinton era finally ended topped France's Le Monde. But the most significant immediate impact was on American political institutions themselves. Within 48 hours of the broadcast, the investigations Tulsi had promised were already underway. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer announced an expanded investigation into the Clinton Foundation, with subpoenas being prepared for financial records, communications, and testimony from foundation officials. The evidence presented by Director Gabbard compels us to examine every aspect of the Clinton family's financial relationships with foreign governments, Comer stated. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley requested immediate classified briefings from Tulsi about the intelligence evidence she had revealed. The American people deserve to know the full scope of how our national security was compromised, Grassley announced. The Justice Department strike force that had been reviewing Tulsi's previous declassifications was given expanded authority and resources to investigate potential criminal violations. Attorney General Pam Bondi issued a statement. No one is above the law regardless of their political position or past power. We will follow the evidence wherever it leads. Treasury Department investigators launched comprehensive audits of Clinton Foundation finances, including the 19 hidden bank accounts discovered by the FBI. The review would examine potential violations of tax law, money laundering statutes, and Foreign Agent Registration Act requirements. International law enforcement agencies began expanding their investigations into trafficking networks with unprecedented cooperation from American intelligence agencies now under new leadership. Victim advocacy groups praised the development, saying it represented the first real hope for justice in decades. The political consequences were equally dramatic. The Democratic Party went into complete crisis mode. Party leadership was forced to address their decades-long association with the Clintons, with many officials rushing to distance themselves from the family they had once celebrated. "We had no knowledge of these activities" became the standard response, though few Americans believed them. Progressive Democrats who had long suspected Clinton corruption felt vindicated. Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib issued a joint statement. "The evidence presented proves what many of us have long believed, that the Democratic establishment prioritized protecting powerful donors over serving the American people." Moderate Democrats faced a different crisis, having built their careers on Clinton connections. Several announced they would not seek re-election rather than face voters' questions about their association with the exposed corruption. The Clinton Foundation essentially collapsed overnight. Major donors withdrew, their support, board members resigned en masse, and operations were effectively suspended as investigations began. The Clinton Global Initiative, which had been scheduled for September 2025, was canceled indefinitely. Hillary's lucrative speaking career evaporated as universities, corporations, and organizations canceled contracts and events. Her memoir tour was postponed indefinitely. Publishers began discussing whether to withdraw her books from circulation, but the transformation went far beyond politics. Intelligence community reforms accelerated under Tulsi's leadership. New protocols were established for classification review, political appointee security clearances, and counterintelligence operations. Career intelligence professionals who had watched their agencies be weaponized for political purposes praised the changes. Congressional oversight was strengthened with enhanced investigation authorities and real-time declassification protocols when evidence of corruption was discovered. The days of hiding behind classification to protect political figures were over. Media accountability became a major issue as Americans questioned how the establishment press had protected Clinton corruption for so long. Alternative media outlets that had investigated Clinton scandals for years felt vindicated, while legacy media faced serious credibility challenges. Public trust in government institutions began to recover for the first time in decades. Polling showed that Americans, while still skeptical of politicians, believed that authentic accountability was finally possible when the right people were in positions of authority. Most importantly, a new standard for American leadership had been established. Tulsi Gabbard's systematic destruction of Hillary Clinton using evidence, authority, and moral clarity showed Americans what authentic accountability looked like. Today proved that in America, no one is above investigation. Tulsi stated in a press conference the following day, "No one is too powerful for the truth, and when authentic leaders with real authority stand up to corruption, transparency wins." This isn't about revenge or political prosecution. This is about finally having someone in power who puts America first, tells the truth, and isn't afraid of the establishment. The investigations will continue, the truth will come out, and justice, real justice, takes time. But today we proved that when warriors face career politicians, when truth faces lies, when authentic service faces manufactured credibility, America wins. The Clinton era was over, the age of accountability had begun, and Americans had witnessed what was possible when their government was led by people who actually kept their oath to defend the Constitution. As Tulsi concluded her press conference, she offered a final message to the American people. "If this story opened your eyes to what real accountability looks like, then share it everywhere. Make sure every American knows that when we elect authentic warriors instead of career politicians, when we demand truth instead of accepting lies, real change is possible." This is what happens when we choose military honor over political corruption. This is what happens when we put America first. The fight for America's soul isn't over, it's just beginning. But today proved that when authentic Americans stand up for truth, we can still win. The most devastating political destruction in American history was complete, but more importantly, it had shown Americans that their country could still be redeemed when the right people were willing to fight for truth no matter how powerful the corruption they faced.